Cool, fantastic. So thanks everyone for joining. Give me a thumbs up, a hand raise or something if you can see me, just to make sure, and hear me more importantly. Cool, awesome. Thanks everyone for joining the session. So we are here to recap on highlights for Microsoft Ignite and share some future trends around AI and data. So hello, everybody. I'm Abby. I'm a partner technology strategist at Microsoft, and I'm based in Auckland, New Zealand. So before we begin, I would just like to pay our respects to the people of the land I'm on here in New Zealand, the Māori people. Our respect also extends to their kaumātua, both past and present, and to all First Nations and Indigenous peoples, as well as their ancestral lands. We're grateful to those who have created pathways for us to live with and the many benefits we experience today. So Microsoft Ignite was a tech conference we had in Chicago in November. Was anyone in the audience actually lucky enough to attend in person? Give me a thumbs up or a hand raise. Cool, me neither. So with so many updates and so much content, especially in the data and AI space, we thought we'll do a recap to hopefully help you not have to go through every single session as a video recording. So we have 90 minutes today. So that's a bit more detail than a breeze through, and hopefully just enough detail that if you were interested in a particular area, you know what to look for, how to get started, which sessions to dive deep into the formal recordings for, and also just where to from here. So we'll also cover on top of Ignite just some recent updates near and around that Ignite timeframe as well. So pretty much anything that we think will be useful for technologists, consultants, and builders when it comes to AI and data. So whether that's building new applications, adding an innovative feature, or getting the data estate in order. So all of that we will be going through today. We will, however, not be talking to M365 Copilot from an end user or licensing perspective today. It did get a lot of airtime at Ignite, and there are plenty of really cool updates there that would warrant a session like this on its own. But yeah, feel free to hop onto the Ignite site and watch those recordings online if you were interested. But with that, let's get into it. So this is the order and rough timing today. We have a few different sections brought to you by our amazing partner solution architect in the Microsoft Australia and New Zealand partner tech team. I will flag out Q&A will be at the end, but if you have any questions, feel free to use the chat. There is also a Q&A feature on the top panel there. I've put in a sample question for those of you wondering where the takeaway links and the recording might be. So feel free to use either the chat or the Q&A function. A few of us will be answering as we go, and the speakers will also go through the chat after their section too. But for anything requiring further discussion, we'll just use the last 5, 10, 15 minutes for that. And so finally, we will send a link out to all the resources, the slides, and we'll get the recording link added there as well. So I'll get that link dropped into the chat shortly and throughout the session for you to reference and also pass around to your friends and colleagues who can't make it today. Anyway, that is enough of me. I will hand you over to our first speaker, Nick Ward. Nick, are you on the line?
Awesome. Thank you so much, Abby. I am here and taking control. Likewise, just give me a thumbs up if you can hear me, and hopefully I'll see a few as I carry on. Excellent. All right, let's move forward. So yeah, good morning? No, good afternoon. Well, I suppose it depends on exactly where you are, but generally speaking, good morning if you're over in Perth. Good morning to you, good afternoon for everybody else. I'm here to talk to you about Copilot Studio and what's new in the low-code AI world that was announced at Ignite, as Abby mentioned. I thought I'd just do a quick grounding on what Copilot Studio is for those who maybe haven't come across it yet, and then pretty quickly go into the new features that were announced at Ignite. And there was quite a lot that was mentioned. I am also going to have some links at the end of this session to the sessions that go into all of this in a lot more detail as well. So if there's bits and pieces that pique your interest, then there's likely a session on that that you can dive into it in more detail. So what is Copilot Studio? It is a tool for building AI agents. It's a low-code tool, so it's intended for business analysts right through to professional developers to be able to use to quickly, rapidly build AI-based chatbots or AI agents. These agents that you create with Copilot Studio can be used in a number of different settings. One of the popular scenarios for Copilot Studio is actually to extend Microsoft 365 Copilot. So as Abby mentioned, we're not going into detail on M365 Copilot itself, other than perhaps to say that Copilot Studio can be used to create agents that M365 Copilot users can start interacting with and getting value from directly within Microsoft 365 Copilot. So that's one of the scenarios that the Copilot Studio is often used, but it can be used in a lot of other scenarios as well. You can create standalone agents that you can then embed into your website. You can connect to it through a variety of instant messaging tools. You can embed it in applications. So there's lots of different ways that you can deliver your agents that you create with Copilot Studio to your user base. And we'll have a look towards the end of my session here at an innovative new way to bake it into your websites and some of the new user scenarios that are being created here. So if we have a look at the life cycle of an agent, it's useful to ground ourselves in that so that we can then see where the new features fit into sort of the journey of creating an agent. So you start by essentially just describing what you want your agent to do. So you can really just start with you are an agent that helps employees find information about their annual leave policy, or whatever it is you want the agent to do. You can describe it, and then Copilot Studio can then go and build the first pass of the agent just based on your description. And from my experience using it, it actually does a really good job of giving you that first pass agent. Then when the Copilot or the agent can then be triggered by a number of different ways. Of course, somebody could talk to it and get a response. But one of the relatively new features we've announced is the ability to automatically trigger an agent via various events that happen throughout your organization. We'll talk a bit more about that at a moment, to create autonomous agents that act independently of somebody deliberately talking to them. You can chat over knowledge with generative AI using Copilot Studio agents. It's very simple to connect a Copilot Studio agent to your files, your website, your SharePoint document libraries, etc., in order to be able to produce that sort of RAG or results augmented generation type pattern over your data. That's a very common scenario with Copilot Studio and something that you can create pretty quickly and easily. You can also create specific topics if there's scenarios that you want your users to be able to do, and you want a lot of control over how that scenario plays out in terms of the conversation back and forth, then you can create topics to handle those very specific situations. You can create actions, which is where the agent that you create can take action on what the user is doing. So this is where you have integration to APIs, back-end systems, where you can create sales orders, or you can purchase equipment, or you can create a new user in a database, or whatever action that the API represents that you're connecting to. You can bring that into your agent. As I mentioned before, you can publish to multiple channels, whether that's M365 Copilot or whether it's a standalone channel like a website or an instant messaging client. There's monitoring included in the box, and there's a variety of pro code services that you can connect to as well. So it's a bit of a journey through the creation of an agent with Copilot Studio. So now let's dive into a bit more detail on some of the new announcements that were released at Ignite. And they cover a breadth of things from extending M365 Copilot more easily to the quality of AI answers that are being generated. The analytics and governance situations were improved. The agentic capabilities, the autonomous agents that I talked about, integration with Azure AI. Dan's going to be talking in a moment in more detail about Azure AI Foundry, and there's a number of scenarios where Copilot Studio works well with AI Foundry, so I'll mention a couple of those. The new Copilot SDK, and finally, using the generative AI capability in an IVR scenario for people calling into help center, help desks, for example, and having a conversation with your agent. So firstly, making it easier to create an agent. So when you've got somebody using M365 Copilot and they want to extend the Copilot capability with their own custom agent, there's a new experience that makes this really easy from inside M365 Copilot. So the user doesn't even have to go to Copilot Studio anymore to create an agent. They can actually create it while they're in M365 Copilot with a little Copilot Studio Lite interface that you can see on the screen here. And this is where you start just by saying, you know, I want to call the agent this. In this example, I want to call the agent field service agent. I want it to, you know, have these capabilities. And you just have this conversation to build up what you want your agent to do. There's also a more traditional configuration experience as well. If you want to, you know, fill in text boxes and select drop-down list boxes and those sorts of things as well. But that's one of the new capabilities, easier to create the agents in the first place. There's been a lot of work on improving the quality of the AI answers that Copilot Studio is creating. It's been a real focus area for the team. And so this has come about in a few different ways. The first is the team has upgraded Copilot Studio agents to be now using GPT-4o and GPT-4o Mini, so the latest OpenAI models. And that right there has, of course, improved the quality of Copilot Studio agents by using a better foundational model for the basis of what they're doing. SharePoint search, searching over you know, document libraries and so forth is a very common scenario for Copilot Studio. A lot of work's gone on there to improve the accuracy of the responses, the speed of the responses for that RAG scenario. So to be able to throw a bunch of documents into a SharePoint document library, put a Copilot Studio agent over the top of it, and you know, within a few minutes, you've got a RAG agent, very capable, ready to go. So a lot of work's gone on there in terms of the back end to make that as accurate and performant as possible. And there's also a new knowledge curation experience that gives you insight into which documents, which document libraries in your knowledge base are being used to actually answer users' questions. So you can get a sense for what are my users asking, what documents in my knowledge base are being used to satisfy those answers. There's also a guided UX for the user based on their query to then suggest to them filters and so forth that they can apply in that conversation dynamically. Analytics have been improved. There's new insights that have been put into the analytic and reporting engine, so you can get more insight into what's going on, including, as I just mentioned before, the ability to see what documents and knowledge-based sources are answering the most questions and so forth. Security and governance has been another area with a lot of focus. This is critical for Copilot Studio because, of course, when you're creating these agents across knowledge bases, across APIs within your organization, there's a lot of powerful capability that can be delivered via an agent. And so you need to make sure that you've got the right security controls in place, the right governance controls to make sure that's being managed correctly. So for example, the ability by policy to enable or disable triggers for autonomous agents is a setting. Single tenant Azure app registrations can be created for new agents to reduce or eliminate the requirement to have a multi-tenant app registration. So network improvements, etc. So there's a lot of work that's going on in this space to ensure that Copilot Studio is working in a highly secure and governed environment. One of the really big recent announcements, which was actually just before Ignite, but it was recapped at Ignite, is the autonomous capabilities of Copilot Studio. So this is the idea that you can have an agent operating independently of a human. So we've had the ability, of course, for humans to be able to chat to the agents for a little while now, but now the agents can work on automatic triggers throughout the organization. For example, they could sit there and monitor an email inbox and then take action based on the emails that are coming into that inbox. Or they could be monitoring a database system, and when new records come into that system, it takes action and goes and does its processing, or whatever it might be. And we've got a really quite an extensive library of triggers that can be used with Copilot Studio, and we're leveraging the work that has been done over many years in the Power Automate and Logic Apps space. So all of those triggers and connectors that have been created as part of that Power Platform environment can be used within the Copilot Studio environment. I want to show you a short video now on an autonomous agent being created within the Copilot Studio environment. We tested this before. The audio was working fine. So Abby, just let me know if it's not working now, but hopefully it works for everybody. If for some reason the audio doesn't work for you, this video actually came from one of the Ignite sessions, which I've got a link in the deck to. So you'll be able to follow that up as well after the session. But let's have a look. So there you go. That shows you a little example of how easy it is to set up an autonomous agent. And for anyone that's ever used Power Automate or Logic Apps, that sort of experience would be, I think, very familiar. Certainly was very familiar to me when I first saw it, because it works in a very similar way of say a Power Automate flow triggering automatically on the basis of events, and now your agent can trigger based on those same events as well. So just moving forward, I mentioned integration with AI Foundry and the Azure AI services has been an area that we've seen a lot of customers using and implementing of their own accord. And so the product group has started to create more integrated experiences between the technologies to satisfy a number of use cases. And where we've started with this is in two areas. The first is connecting to Azure AI Search. So I mentioned before that a common usage scenario for Copilot Studio is to search over documents in a SharePoint document library. But we've also seen a lot of customers wanting to connect to an Azure AI Search instance instead of using the SharePoint library sort of built-in capability. And so we've streamlined the connection here between Copilot Studio agents being able to use Azure AI Search as the underlying RAG mechanism for having a conversation with your data. So that's something that is now pretty easy to implement. The other scenario where we've implemented with Azure AI is in the bring your own model space. So Copilot Studio, one of the nice things about it is that you don't need to worry about which foundation model do I need to use and so forth. It just works. Having said that, the opposite side of that coin is sometimes it might be nice if you could use a different foundational model and have a lot more control in that area, because maybe there's a model that does a specific thing really well that you want to create an agent, but you want to use Copilot Studio for all of its low code and productivity enhancements to get that agent out the door quickly. So the good news here is you can now do it. So you can bring your own model from the Azure AI library, where there are lots and lots of models to choose from, and you can bring that into your Copilot Studio agent. There's the new Microsoft 365 Agents SDK, which allows you to connect applications to your Copilot Studio agents for programmatic interaction. And this unlocks some really interesting new application patterns. And I'd like to play you another short video now that shows you a hotel concierge scenario. So the idea here is that a person is staying at a hotel. They're interacting maybe on a tablet, maybe on their phone, maybe on their laptop with the hotel's concierge, and they basically get a web app experience that they can talk to, and that's all handled by the agent in terms of the conversation. But then also the agent then starts driving the website to show the appropriate information from the website to the user based on the conversation that they're having. So it's an interesting new pattern. Take a look. So I like that example because it really shows, I think, an innovative new use of this technology to create a web app experience, which is really dynamic and responding to what the user's trying to get done. I would love to see a lot more of apps built like this in the future. I think it's going to be really, really useful. And then the last major announcement at Ignite was around the generative IVR capability. So this is the ability for people to be able to call in and speak to the agent, replacing the old press 1 for service, press 2 for sales, and be able to just drive that conversation, pretty much as you just saw before in that hotel example, where the person can actually have a conversation with the agent just using their voice, and the agent be able to talk back to them and handle their queries as appropriate. So lots of new capability being introduced with Copilot Studio. As I mentioned, there's a whole bunch of sessions at Ignite. There's a whole bunch of links here that you can go to drill down on these topics. And I will point out that the top link, what's new with Copilot Studio and agents, the session that I've just run through just now is a condensed version of that session. So if you'd like this session, but slowed down a little bit and things gone into in a bit more detail, then that's the session for you. And then the following sessions go into even further detail on various different topics. If you just want to get started with Copilot Studio, here's a bunch of good links that's well worthwhile taking a note of and getting started with Copilot Studio today and creating some agents. And with that, thank you very much for listening, and I appreciate the thumbs ups to show that the audio was working, always a load off the mind. And with that, I'm going to hand over to you, Dan, to take it forward.
Cool, thanks, Nick. Thanks, everyone. Give me a thumbs up if you can hear my audio. Yeah, always like to check. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for coming along. My name is Dan Scott Rainsford. I get called DSR. I'm a solution architect in the partner team with the rest of the champs here, and I focus on AI, or building AI-enabled apps. Now, what I'm going to do is take you through a really whirlwind tour of some of the, I'm not going to call them pro code announcements, because I think everyone can use these tools no matter where you are or the sort of applications you create. We're going to take a look at the AI announcements in Azure. And I'm not going to cover all of them because there were a whole bunch. And of course, since Ignite, there's been a whole bunch more. But we're going to take a look at some of the key ones. And I think just like Nick has been talking about, agents have been a huge focus, and bringing the tools together to make it easier no matter where you land. You know, most applications are often built using, you know, multiple different technologies and components, and the theme, one of the themes is obviously bringing those technologies together and making them easier for you to use. So one of the biggest announcements was Azure AI Foundry. Now, this, if you're familiar, if you've been using Azure AI for a while, you may have come across, of course, Azure AI Studio. Azure AI Foundry is an evolution of that technology, which is set up to bring together all of the Azure AI services to make them easier to consume, because most modern AI applications don't just consist of an LLM or, you know, a large language model. They consist of an AI search and index or multiple indexes. They may consist of document intelligence models, of content understanding, of various other technologies. Those mostly require us to bring those, do a lot of work to bring those all together as part of an AI application. An AI Foundry is intended to help us simplify that process. So with this, it brings obviously the model catalog, which is the ability for us to choose from over 1,800 different models, large language models, image models, text to image, image to text. All of those models are available inside the model catalog, and we can deploy those either as model as a service or model as a platform. It also brings in things like Azure AI Content Safety, the new Azure AI Agent Service, which we'll talk about in a moment, along with all of these things that make up what we call AI Ops, which are evaluating our solution, evaluating our AI platform, customizing, fine-tuning, putting governance over the top, and of course, monitoring and observability, all really key features of any modern AI or agent application. So it brings all of those things together. And then of course, on the left here, no matter what your experience is, no matter what your preferred method of development is, whether it's pro code through, you know, Visual Studio or GitHub, or more of the Copilot Studio, all of those tools are going to hook directly into Azure AI Foundry. But as we said, one of the core features of this is we know, OpenAI, we love OpenAI. They've got fantastic models, but we know there are so many models. And now we're seeing more models around the industries, for example, health and life sciences. A lot of those models are very specific, domain specific, and you need a way to bring those into your applications and not have to worry about the management and the infrastructure and the deployment of all those tasks. So now we've got 1,800 frontier models available, including, of course, OpenAI, but Mistral and Meta and Microsoft's own Phi 4, incidentally, relaunched a couple of days ago. That is also available in there already. And those models are also being incorporated with some new playgrounds. So we've got things like the Health and Life Sciences playground, which allows you to experiment with X-ray image models and pathology text generation models, a whole lot of domain-specific experiences. All of those are brought into Azure AI Foundry. So Azure AI Foundry is, of course, your sort of one-stop shop for putting all this stuff together. But as part of Azure AI Foundry, there was a service called MAS. You may not have called it MAS, but it is Model as a Service experience. And that is the ability for you to deploy one of these models and use it as consumption only. So you don't manage the infrastructure, you just manage or pay for the clicks, the requests against the API for that model. Now that service has now gone GA. That means that you can not only use OpenAI as a pay per click, just like you've been always doing with with your deployments. You can now use the Cohere models, Meta AI, Mistral AI, AI21, and the Microsoft Phi models. All of those are available as pay per click, model as a service, and that is now GA. So that's choose the model that works for you, that works for your workload. Moving on, generative query engine. So Nick talked a lot about RAG, and one of the key functions or features of RAG, retrieval augmented generation, is the ability for your AI app or your agent to retrieve relevant data. Now that data may be perhaps a bunch of chunked documents, maybe a whole lot of stuff you've taken out of SharePoint and you've chunked them up and you've put them into your index. One of the functions that you possibly didn't know often happens as part of this process is what we call query rewrite. So we actually, if you ask an agent a question, your question will often be rewritten before being submitted to the index and have relevant chunks retrieved. Now that was previously done by an LLM, and you usually had to do that as part of your code or execute that process. And as part of Azure AI Search and public preview, we've added what's called SLM-powered query rewriting. Now that means that rather than having to rewrite your query by submitting it to an LLM, which of course increases the latency, you can just submit your query to the Azure AI Search and it will do the rewriting for you at no extra charge, and more importantly, no extra latency, no round trip. That is a big deal. And as part of that, we've also upgraded the re-ranking model. So re-ranking is the process of where once you've passed your query to the index and said, I want, this is the information I'm looking for, the upgraded re-ranker will do a better job, especially around parallelizing or re-ranking across multiple sources. It will do a better job of ordering those search results so you get more relevant content. So that's a really important quality of life feature. It also enables you to actually get more observability into the re-ranker, so you can see how it's re-ranked things, why it's re-ranked things. So moving on, just in the interest of time. So another area is fine-tuning for Azure OpenAI Service. Now we've had fine-tuning for many models in Azure OpenAI, but we've enhanced it a great deal by adding the ability for you to better manage those fine-tuned models for better performing evaluating and looking at how the fine-tuned model is performing and how you monitor that over time. So we've added an entirely new fine-tuning management experience and monitoring experience that you can really dive into and better understand how your models are performing, which is really important, especially whether you're investing the large amount of time that is required to fine-tune a model well. We really need that visibility and that observability. The second part of this is vision fine-tuning. So we've got vision models. We've got, these are models that take an image and give you text, so image to text. These models previously were not able to be fine-tuned. You couldn't fine-tune them to, for example, for a domain-specific, for example, clinical health type scenarios. You weren't able to do that. Now you can. So you can bring your own images and fine-tune the vision models with those. And finally, fine-tuning, you weren't able to use provisional global standard deployments. This was a method of deploying the model so that you were either using PTUs, provisioned throughput units, or deploying the model globally where Azure, Microsoft decided which region to route your request to. You weren't able to use fine-tuning with global standard. So you had to use the region you chose. You would have to use whichever region that was hosting your model, and you couldn't route requests to to other regions using global standard. So now you can do that with the fine-tuning Azure OpenAI fine-tuning service. So that's a lot of Azure AI Foundry. And we're going to talk about Azure AI Agent Service now. Now, Nick talked a bit about this. He mentioned Copilot Studio is going to integrate to this. And this was a really exciting area for me, but it is, again, an evolution rather than a revolution. If you've used something like Assistance API, you may be somewhat familiar with what the Azure AI Agent Service does. Azure AI Agent Service is intended to bring together the common components that make up an agent, which is the LLM, the models, the data sources, the ability to call external sources like Bing, and wrap all that with security and content safety and all the protections you need when building an LLM, an AI-based service. All of those are wrapped together in what we call the Azure AI Agent Service. And you can think of that as your AI app platform. And if you have used the Assistance API as part of OpenAI, you may be a little bit familiar with this concept. And I'll talk about how it differs in the next slide. But effectively, this service brings together, as I said, the model, different models, so the ability to choose other models as a service, and we go back to that models as a service concept, as well as the knowledge. And these are the current sources of knowledge that are supported. So Fabric, SharePoint, Bing, Azure AI Search, your own licensed data, and of course, Azure Files, blob storage. And you can also call functions and APIs and other things to take actions or have your agents take those actions. All of that can be packaged up as an agent and then deployed to the Azure Agent AI service. But the question I have been asked multiple times is, well, what's the difference between the Assistance API and the agent service? So this handy diagram, this handy table, is a good place to think about this. Assistance API really was the middle ground. It gave you all those functions, but it was wrapped into the OpenAI models. So if you wanted to bring your own model, if you wanted to use a different model, or you wanted to host it for yourself and your infra, if you needed to, for example, for compliance, governance, security reasons, you had to do that. If you wanted to use data stores that weren't supported, that were things like Fabric, that were very, outside the OpenAI ecosystem, you weren't able to do that. So Agent Service takes all the great stuff that Assistance API provides and decouples it, but makes it still easily manageable for you. So you can get all that value of having a really nice bundle of things together, but also have the flexibility to make it your own. So we've got a few more slides, and then we'll hand over. But the next thing is, this was a great service, and Nick and I have had a couple of discussions on this one. The Azure AI Content Understanding. Now, it is a little bit similar to the Azure AI Document Intelligence service if you've used that. But what this service allows you to do is define what we call a schema, which is basically this is the structure of the data I want to get from this input, this document. Now, when we say it's document, it can be Word documents. Actually, it doesn't support Word yet, only supports PDF, a number of other document types, but it also supports audio and images and video. So those are really cool. So you can say, look, I want to extract a security event from this security cam footage, and the security event I want to know is what is the description of the event. I want these properties extracted. You pass that information through as a JSON structure, and it will go and provide you that output. Now that's in a nutshell, but it is built into Azure AI Foundry. Can be a little bit of a tricky one to find in there, but a pro tip is you need to go into AI Foundry and go to the home and not be in an Azure AI hub, not be in a hub. You have to actually be in a home, and you'll see it on the front page there, and it'll open up a specialized experience for Azure AI Content Understanding. It's a really powerful tool, and I think it's going to be just another great tool we have in our tool belt to help us take more content and extract more information from it. The next one, of course, is Azure AI Content Safety. That is, responsible AI is built in everything we do. Azure AI Content Safety has grown considerably since it was first launched. It is often built into many of the models and large language models, but you're also able to use it standalone. One of the big new features that Azure AI Content Safety added was risk and safety evaluations for image content. So if you were using, say, a image to text model or an image plus text to text, you weren't able to put safety or block harmful content coming in that were passed in through the images. So if you were passing in, a text and a whole lot of images from a PDF, you weren't able to protect and ensure that the content that was being passed in was safe. Now you can. So this is a really powerful tool. So we can now wrap more responsibility and responsible AI around our tooling and put more security on top of it. Now this one here, if we have any other developers who've been around for a while, one of the challenges we have is we need to be able to determine which model actually works best for us. Often previously we've been using what's called evaluations as part of Azure AI Foundry or prompt flow or many of the other techniques to evaluate the model or our AI system as part of our development process. But sometimes the only way we can evaluate is in production or effectively evaluate. This allows us to do A/B testing with multiple models behind a single endpoint. Now that's really cool. The API will be the same, but you can have it, and you can have an API endpoint and have different models respond to different users, and then measure the response or the quality of the response, either through the user feedback or through your own live evaluation or auditing. So this is going to make it much easier to do those, which model is best for my particular scenario. Now you can, of course, have multiple models, not just two, you can have multiple. You can do ABC testing, as it were. So I think this is going to be really cool because we do need to do we do need to do more investigation of what the best model is for us, especially as we now have so many models to choose from. And finally, this is coming soon. It is basically a new experience for managing all of these services and all this tooling in one place. So Azure AI Foundry, we're building in a whole lot of new functionality to monitor, to do all the monitoring on those A/B testing, to monitor our endpoints, to get more visibility, especially as our systems and solutions get much more complicated. So that's going to come soon. I'm looking forward to that because monitoring has always been one of the things we need to, especially where, when tokens are involved. So with that, this is my last slide, and then I think I'm going to hand over to Benny. But if you are looking for a bit more of a deeper dive into all of the announcements to do with anything to do with AI in Azure, this is a list of them. If you head to that link, the Azure AI AKMS Azure AI Foundry at Ignite, and look up one of these codes, it has a list of all of these sessions. You can watch the videos. Most of what I've talked about here is covered in there, and there's a whole lot of deeper stuff you can get into. So with that, I am going to hand over to Benny. Say hi, Benny. Thanks everyone for listening.
Hey everyone, hope you can see my screen. So I'll just go to navigate to my section. Just give me a sec. All right. Thanks for being here today. So today, Chris and myself will cover all the data and fabric announcements that were made at Insight. So the first announcement that I want to touch upon is the Fabric databases. So if you go to Fabric, you will see a new compute engine called databases. So as you know, like Fabric is a data platform and is a SaaS platform. So as part of our extension, so today Fabric supports both all the analytical workloads through lake houses and data warehouses. So as part of making this platform extendable even to transaction workloads, we're kind of announcing Fabric databases, which are SaaS databases deployed on Fabric. So you could use these databases for your apps development as well. Right. So what does that mean from a SaaS perspective? It kind of makes your management of databases quite easier. So you don't have to decide about your, say, your tiers or the kind of hardware that your service runs on. It's all still runs on the Fabric SKUs as well. And one of the first databases to go into these is the familiar SQL Server database. So now SQL Server is available as a SaaS database in Fabric. So as part of that, like it is auto-tuned, so you could call that as an autonomous database. The indexes are automatically updated. The performance is automatically tuned with the workload. It's a serverless model. And plus it comes with like capabilities that most of you are familiar with, like ability to define your primary keys, foreign keys, indexes. Because it is on Fabric, the data is also stored in a OneLake as Delta Parquet format in an open source format. Plus, you get all the benefits of the SaaS platform in terms of availability and security, as well as with the CI/CD support with like Visual Studio Code and GitHub. So the other important update with this is so these databases are not just transaction databases. Now they have the vector capability as well. So with SQL databases in Fabric, so you have the ability to store vectors. You have the ability to index vectors and search vectors to disk in and algorithm. So we'll dive a little bit into that in the next slide. So across the databases, you will see a common theme being like all the databases will eventually support AI workloads. That means they will be capable of acting not just as transaction databases, but also as vector databases. So you will see, like, for instance, the Postgres on Azure database like now supports disk ANN. The disk ANN is we could say is an algorithm that was created by my Microsoft research team, and it's now open source. It is an approximate nearest neighbor search vector algorithm. So the difference here being like the vector indexes are compressed and stored at disk, so requiring very minimal memory for processing. So you will see an increase in speed without losing precision. So at the time of search, these indexes are kind of rehydrated into an SSD disk in a graph form, and then they will serve the query. So this capability is now available in Postgres through the PG Vector extension. So that is something to look forward to. And another feature that is made available in Postgres is the ability to do semantic re-ranking, similar to how you have in, say, Azure AI Search, for instance. So today, if your workloads are on structured databases, like Postgres, you could use these capabilities to rank your searches within the scope of the database without using another vector database. So that's on Postgres side. So from Cosmos DB perspective, it now supports both the text search as well as the vector search. So which they call it as now it's hybrid search compatible. So the key things a key takeaway here is if you have structured databases and if you're using it to ground your AI models, and if you're looking for vector capability, you could do that within the scope of the database without bringing in an addition and the vector store. So staying on the topic with PostgreSQL, so Postgres, some new capabilities were announced. So there's a capability of auto-tuning indexes in Postgres SQL database that is in public preview. The other and a big update with PostgreSQL is the ability to scale horizontally with the Citus model. So previously, this capability was available in Cosmos DB for the Postgres API. So that is more at a regional level. So as you know, Cosmos DB can be deployed across multiple geos. So the same capability is now available in Postgres. Like if you want to do a local deployment, like you could have shards across your data sets, either in rows or in schemas. Then the next big announcement was around MySQL databases. So if you're looking to migrate your MySQL databases from your data centers or from other clouds into Azure, so we have like the migration assessment capability and new tools that are available to make this migration easier to the managed service. Moving on to Redis. So at Ignite, we announced a new service called the Azure Managed Redis. So what this is it brings in the latest capability of Redis engine into as a managed service. So with this, you could do something like you could do a caching on JSON files, on time series data, as well as the Bloom filters with 5 nines availability SLA, right? So it is a step up from what used to be the Azure Cache for Redis. So and this is available. It is available in public preview at the moment. And the scale of innovations haven't stopped with just the PaaS and the SaaS services. So if you're, we kind of upgraded the SQL Server as well. So if you're using SQL Server in your own data centers, in the other clouds, or as an IaaS, the SQL 2025 is now available in private preview. And now this database is also AI capable, so you can use this as a vector database. You have all the vector capabilities with Discane and available in this database edition as well. And on top of that, this can be managed on Azure Arc if that's how you want to manage your software updates and like say configuring your defenders. You could do that on Arc. And these databases are also integrated with Fabric. So if you want to do a no-code ETL into Fabric using the mirroring capabilities, so SQL Server 2025 can be mirrored into Fabric as well. And these are like a summarization of all the updates just from the database perspective. So this will be available in the slide deck for you to dig deeper into any of those things that I touched upon. And with that, I'll hand it over to Chris, who will take you through with some of the updates specific to Fabric. Over to you, Chris.
Thanks very much, Benny. Great job there. Loads of great announcements around data platform coming out of Ignite. I'm going to cover the Fabric side of things. Now, one of the announcements that came out was around One Lake Catalog. So this is an evolution on top of the One Lake Data Hub in Fabric. Key capabilities that are being extended here is we're providing in-place management and discovery for data within Fabric, as well as governance and data insights across all of your Fabric data estate. The capabilities will allow users to find and discover and access data that's important to them much more easily. And from the governance perspective, it'll allow you to get insights on, what data has been endorsed, what tags exist across data, as well as being able to, basically get better at data quality and governance within Fabric. The Explore tab will become generally available very soon. However, the Governance tab is coming into public preview in a short time. Did I advance the slides then? I just want to check. Anyone? Thumbs up? No? Yes, thumbs up, great. So the next major announcement with Fabric at Ignite was around our sustainability solution. Now, sustainability to support ESG is one of our big data challenges at the moment. It brings in so much data from so many different systems that it can become quite complex for organizations to build a proper ESG reporting system for themselves. So within Fabric, we've made that much more simplified for every organization so that they can meet their ESG or their sustainability reporting requirements. So what does that mean? So there are 5 different capabilities that are built within Fabric for sustainability. They are premised on the first capability, which is an ESG data estate. So this is a lakehouse with a predefined schema to allow you to create that sustainability data lake and notebooks to build data transformations on that. On top of that, we have environmental and data insights, environmental, social and governance metrics, social and governance insights, as well as Microsoft Azure emissions insights. Now, these are all pre-built notebooks, pipelines, semantic models that you can deploy very quickly and easily, and then simply start connecting your source data to that to allow the data to flow in, begin to transform, and reporting, pre-built reporting to be utilized within the organization. So the sustainability solution within Fabric is designed to speed up and simplify ESG for organizations. The next announcement at Fabric, at Ignite around Fabric was around open mirroring. So if you're familiar with Fabric shortcuts and Fabric mirroring to date, mirroring being actually simplifying the ETL and bringing data in from selected source systems such as Azure SQL database, What we're doing here is opening this up through a standard API for any source data to be brought in seamlessly without having to configure ETL within Fabric. It relies on you setting up a landing zone within Fabric and harnessing a third-party CDC capability that we're building out with different partners. Those different partners include Stream, Oracle Golden Gate, DataStax, so on, so that you can land your initial snapshot and then all the delta changes that are happening within your source system directly into Fabric OneLake. We then have automated pipelines that will take that data, transform it, and put it directly into tables within a lakehouse for you. So this will speed up the integration of your source system data, no matter where it is, no matter if it's on-prem or if it's held in proprietary systems like Oracle, for example, directly into your analytics platform for reporting. We've also had a number of enhancements to AI skills within Fabric. If you're not familiar with AI skills, these are a custom Q&A experience that you can build that's grounded on your data within Fabric. So what we do here is we set up an AI skill. It does require an F64 capacity or above to host the skill. You can set that skill up on a selection of objects within Fabric Lakehouses or data warehouse, so different tables. And then once the skill's created, and it's very quick and simple to build this skill, it generates a URL endpoint that you can then embed in your own applications, or you can embed it in SharePoint or in Teams, and it provides a conversational QA experience for users to ask questions of the data that you've built the skill on for the table within the lakehouse or the warehouse. Now, what we've done, announced at Ignite, is that we're going to extend the data sources that skills can be based on. So they can now be based on semantic models or even KQL databases in the event house. We're also harnessing newer models so that we can have much more natural conversational Q&A over the data. And they're also being integrated with Azure AI Foundry so that we can integrate them into those agentic workflows to get much, much more value out of your Fabric data. And another interesting development is AI functions in Fabric. Now, AI functions, we could always, within a notebook within Fabric, go and call a REST API for an Azure Cognitive Search service, I should say, to do something like text translation or key phrase extraction or sentiment analysis. We've streamlined that now with AI functions within Fabric. So you have the ability within Fabric notebooks to simply call a function without having to set up your search endpoint or your service endpoint, service key, and so on. You can simply call a function from within the notebook to do something like key phrase extraction or sentiment analysis. Now, the way we've done this is by integrating those AI services directly into Fabric for you to call. It does, again, require you to have an F64 capacity or above to harness this. And we have also integrated AI services with Azure OpenAI so that you can call Azure OpenAI to do things like classification or summarization directly from a function call within a notebook. All you need to do is to import the Synapse ML library to enable this. And of course, as I said, have an F64 or above capacity to host it. And I think that's over to Priya now.
Thank you, Chris. I'll actually share my screen. Let me know if you can see my screen. All right, so thank you all. Thank you all for staying with us so far. I'm just covering a couple of more slides before we end today's session. So GitHub Copilot or GitHub in general was not really included in the MS Ignite this year, but a lot of things has been happening in that space. And since it's a very important tool when it comes to AI for the developer productivity and velocity, we just wanted to include a bit of the information as to what's happening in the GitHub world. So first thing first, we'll start with GitHub Copilot, which is a tool like an AI pair programmer. You can go ahead and basically add some sort of comment, and based off that comment, it is going to convert that into a code or a suggestion. Now, GitHub Copilot provides you the context from your local files, so it's not really attached to any sort of the repository, and the file that is being edited could be hosted on GitHub or any other repo, but it's not really a requirement. It also shares the data in an ephemeral way. So if you have some sort of data, it is not really sort of put back into any kind of data model for suggestion. So your data is your data and nothing really happens in regards to that. In general, I've been getting lots of questions asked around data residency. We do have GitHub Enterprise Cloud, which just got generally available for the EU region, but will also be available in the Asia region as well, probably next year. And most probably that's going to be in Australia. So that will also solidify that the data will remain within the confinements of Australia or ANZ as a region. It wouldn't really go up to any external location. Now, GitHub Copilot uses a transformative model. Basically, like Google Translate, you put in some sorts of words in English, which translates into another language. It hasn't really seen that exact sentence before or necessarily translated it before, but based off the semantics and definition, it is going to provide you the answer based off that. And what it uses in forms of suggestion is usually probabilistic determination. So it usually generates a code based off what you're trying to sort of add in terms of the context. It will focus on the couple of lines that you have mentioned before, and based off that, it will go ahead and give you the suggestions. It works like this. You'll provide a particular sort of comment like get average runtime of successful runs in seconds, and based off that, it is going to give you some sort of suggestions. It can work on any language, including Java, PHP, Python, JavaScript, or any language that you're comfortable with. Because it's trained on languages in public repositories, it works for most popular languages, libraries, and frameworks as well. Within GitHub Copilot, we also have another feature called as Copilot Chat. Now, Copilot Chat is a method through which you can actually go ahead and conversate with the AI pair programmer about the particular code. So it's just looking for any sort of language pattern that you want to go ahead and go through in terms of the code. Like, for example, you want to find any bugs, you want to run any sort of unit test cases, or you want to find any sort of syntax errors. All of that you can go ahead and do through the GitHub Copilot Chat as well. And not just that, even if you want to probably add some sort of own inline style features to the code, like you want some sort of brackets and you're not really happy with the code that the GitHub Copilot has suggested, you can go ahead and add those features and functionalities as well through GitHub Copilot Chat as well. So the next thing is GitHub Copilot Workspaces. Now, this is something which is a unique and forward-thinking approach, which offers a new developer experience. So far, what we have seen specifically in the Copilot world is that you can use generative AI as the assistant tool to within your own code editor, whether it's VS Code or the other editor that you are using, to basically go ahead and get a answer suggested based off the comment that you're adding, or you can just do a copy and paste into the LLM model for any sort of assistance or creating chatbots. And usually that has been the space that we have worked with when it comes to the developer world. But GitHub Copilot Workspaces actually takes a forward-thinking approach or a step further from that and introduces a structured environment, which kind of redefines how the workflow happens for the developer. So in general, what we have seen that it works in my local environment. Why doesn't it work in the prod environment? So these are some of the questions we usually get from the developers, where there is lots of tedious and manual tasks that they have to do to set up their local environments before they can actually start working on the code. And we see lots of problems when it comes to multiple developer projects as well. So that's where the GitHub Copilot workspaces kind of comes in, because it's ideal for those multi-developer project environments where you can isolate the tasks, features, and fixes. So teams can create separate workspaces for the feature development or bug fixes or testing Q&A. And this kind of enables a parallel development without sort of having any conflicts or stepping on each other's toes. And it also workspaces maps to the specific branches in repositories as well, which allows developers to isolate the kind of work that they are doing. So for example, developer A would be working on some sort of feature request, which can manage some sort of changes, and they want to test before merging into the main branch. So they can also go ahead and do these kind of tests before they actually go ahead and do a pull request. So teams can organize dedicated workspaces for dev, Q&A, and prod environment, which enables a smooth sort of testing environment and also promotes the code for the automated workflows. Now, how does it do that? You can integrate with GitHub Copilot. You can also integrate with GitHub Code Spaces as well if you are into the realms of the GitHub ecosystem, and it will directly act as your native dev environment. So let's say if you have a GitHub issue, workspaces will extract the relevant information from that issue, and the repository will be generated to have a specific sort of detailed information based off that. So what sort of repo you are attached to and what sort of issue you have, based off that, it is going to go ahead and create a general plan for you. From there, it will provide some sort of specifications. Now you can edit those specifications, or you can add based off the plan that you want. Once that plan is particularly good, you can go ahead and it will go ahead and generate a diff view for you, like a default view. And you can see if you are okay with whatever it has suggested, you can just go ahead and simply create a pull request. Within that pull request as well, it will go ahead and create some sort of description and provide you the links as well for the workspaces. So you are in the cognizance of what's really happening in your environment, and you're keeping track of all the new pull requests that has been created. Now, if you are in the GitHub world and let's say you're using GitHub Actions for your CI/CD development tool, or you're using GitHub Advanced Security for code scanning or secret scanning, as soon as you'll do the pull request, it is going to trigger off these actions as well, making sure that your code is in complete compliance as to whatever is happening in your environment. So it's a step forward, because it's really transforming how developers can work, and usually that planning, testing can be taken care of, and what you are left to do is basically focus on the code and not do just the manual and the tedious tasks. In terms of the look, this is how it will look like. So basically what you can go ahead and you can start adding a comment to it in the issue that is existing, and it will go ahead and create a plan for you. And if that plan looks okay, you can do your own human code review. You can just go ahead and create a pull request after that. Next, we have the GitHub Copilot for Azure. Now, in this year's GitHub Universe, GitHub Copilot extensions were announced, and as a sub part of that, it was announced that we'll have a GitHub Copilot extension for Azure, which means that if you are using a VS Code or a Visual Studio or any other editor, and if you are using GitHub Copilot, you will also have another feature available called as GitHub Copilot extension. So basically, without going to the Azure portal, you can call out to the Azure resources which that particular code is using or that application is using right through in your code editor. And we know that in developer world, we have lots of context switching. We are going from one portal to another portal. And sometimes if there is an issue, it takes several minutes, several hours to actually figure out where exactly is the problem, because there is too much happening in a developer's world. So by the virtue of these extensions, what we're trying to say is that if you want to get some sort of information, for example, there's a container running of a particular application. Let's say you have a microservices application which has order service, notification service, or vendor services. And within that order service, you want to see this particular service is running on which container. There's no need to go through Azure portal and then go through a couple of clicks and get to the eventual Azure Container App or AKS or whatever orchestration platform you have chosen to actually get to that service. Rather, you can just, through the virtue of GitHub Copilot extension, you can call out and say, hey, where exactly is this particular service running? And it will directly take you to that particular point where your GitHub Copilot, where your service is particularly running. So it can actually go ahead and take you that exact location without really going through a couple of different paths. And similarly, we have GitHub Copilot extension in general as well. So imagine you are a developer who just got paged on an incident which relates to a database error. Now, you're trying to get the sense of the issue, the complete context of the issue from lots of tools. You might be using a couple of tools in your environment. So it could be from a GitHub issue, or it could be something which is happening in the audit logs, let's say in DataStax, you're using DataStax. So what we are trying to do through GitHub Copilot extension is to give you enough context that you start troubleshooting as soon as you can about what could be the cause, and then going to different sort of tools should be a very easy task for you, right? So there should not be a lot of context switching, like you're going to DataStax first, and if that is not the problem, then you're going to, let's say, Sentry for your error monitoring, and then probably that's not the issue, and then you're going to different resources that you might have deployed on Azure. So there's lots of areas that you have to figure out, that you have to go to basically figure out what could be the issue. Now, GitHub Copilot extension, what it does, it basically brings the whole process together. So as you saw what happened in the Azure part, where you can call out the resources wherever they are running in the Azure, that's very similar to how you can do in general for different tools as well. So from GitHub Copilot chat option, you can simply invoke all these tools to get context, perform actions, and generate files, and also do pull requests, which basically accelerates the overall developer workflow across these multiple tools. So from the starting perspective, the tools that we do support, or the extensions that we support, are DataStax, Docker, Lambda Test, LaunchDarkly, McKinsey, MongoDB. So there are many more that we support like right off the bat. And I know that with it being a GA feature in the next year, probably we'll see much more availability of other developer tools as well, which you can call out through the extension perspective. So this is again a marketplace offering. So it's basically open to all, and our organizations can also create their own Copilot extension as well. So for your own homegrown developer tools that you might be using, or any sort of internal library or API that you have, or like a knowledge custom base that you have, you can create your own GitHub Copilot extension as well, which will call out those internal tools that you might be using in your internal environment. And with that, we are at the end of our session. So we do have some time for Q&A, so please feel free to ask any questions. And also, we would really love for you to just add in your feedback, because that really helps us to curtail or to work on any sort of feedback that we get. And if you really liked it and you would want more of such sessions, please feel free to add that as well in the survey. And yeah, open for all the any questions that anybody has in all the Ignite updates and also GitHub update that they have seen. Additionally, I also wanted to mention that we do have the link shared. So the slide deck, this presentation and recording, and all the links will be available on our Seismic page. So if you want to share this with anybody else who wasn't really able to join the session today, please feel free to go ahead and share that. I know that the link was pasted on the chat as well.
Any questions or comments with anyone? There is a question actually. Is there a consolidated roadmap for when these features will be available for public preview and then GA? Roger, I am guessing this is referring to the GitHub Copilot?
Power Platform, I think, PP.
Public preview.
Oh, no, public preview. Power Platform. For the AI product, for the Azure AI components, there isn't a consolidated view that shows them, because it shows all in one, because they're often managed by different teams, a different view. So we will try and share as much of that as we can. The way generally we try and keep across these things is looking at subscribing to the what's new pages or the Azure updates, but unfortunately, yeah, there's no consolidated view of all of the Azure AI products. We'd love one too, though.
Okay, Roger says this is
Foundry.
for Foundry and Copilot Studio. Dan, are there any known, and Nick, are there any known PP or GA dates coming up that we know of?
Not off the top of my head. I'm happy to have a look into that one though. See if I can come up with what the if there is a list.
Yeah, and I guess the if we do, we can obviously share certain things in NDA, but of course, this being a public session, we can't. If we know specific dates, we can't share them. But you can always reach out to the, your PTS or relevant partner team, and they can obviously do some digging. But we always try and share as much of that roadmap information as we can. Fabric, of course, has a fantastic roadmap, as Benny has just pointed out.
Cool. And Alex has just shared the Power Platform release plan as well, which includes the Copilot Studio roadmap. Fantastic. Any other questions? And has everyone remaining bookmarked the takeaway link as well as filled in the feedback form? Please help us do that with the feedback. Cool. Well, we have 7 minutes to go. So if anyone has a last minute question or you want to wait for everyone else to drop off, so you're last for some reason, feel free to do that. But for everyone else, thanks for joining again, and thanks for sticking around until the end. And we will, I guess the speakers will stay on for the next couple minutes until everyone is gone. Cool. And yeah, Merry Christmas for a week's time.
Indeed.
Happy holidays, everybody.
Yeah, happy holidays. New Year. More AI.
Merry Chris AI, Miss. I was asking for the feedback code.
We post the link to the URL.
We will just post that link again.
There you go.
Wait. Oh. We're sorted, and I'm thinking the others. Oh, last minute question. There we go. Knew somebody was waiting until the end. Cheers, Sean. Cheers, Lewis. So last minute question, with more AI related functions being added to SQL Server, etc., is there some guides around choosing AI search over traditional SQL? Great question.
There is something, but Benny, I'll let you go. You go, mate.
All right, so I think the key message here is like all the databases are becoming, or eventually will become a vector database. What that means from an architecture perspective is if there's a need for storing vectors or indexing vectors, and if your application is based off a database or structured database, you can stay within the scope of the database to address that instead of using another vector database service like AI search. Having said that, AI search is not going to be redundant. It's going to be more important than ever before. AI search is a great use case for unstructured data if you're working with knowledge bases, PDFs, things like that, which are not handled by databases. That's my take on that. Chris, you want to add anything onto it, or DSR?
I would say that it depends upon what skill base you're coming from. So the beauty of working with a vector store in Azure SQL or SQL Server or Postgres is you interface with T-SQL or PG SQL. So if that's your skill base, that might be naturally where you go. That said, AI search has a lot more capabilities than just a vector store that you can blend in with it. So the ability, as you said, Benny, to work with unstructured documents and crack them, to create your own skills or use skills over the top of those documents to transform and enrich it even further before it goes into your knowledge base or into your vector store. So it really depends upon the solution and what the skill base is you're coming from.
I think I saw a slide at one of the Ignite sessions with a side-by-side, when you use the database, when you use that, and it pretty much said exactly what Chris and Benny just said. It's just a little table that says, you use what, use what fits. But I don't know where I've seen that, and I tried to do a quick search and couldn't find it. There's so much content. Be great if we could share it. We'll do some searching. I'll do some searching.
I did also just put a link to an article on choosing an Azure service for vector search. So that might have some useful info in it, including a flowchart on which one to use when.
Oh, best
fine, Nick.
Yeah.
Nice.
Even better than a PowerPoint.
Yeah, awesome. And meeting guest unverified. I can take a guess who this is from previous chats. But I think you might be the last one standing. So congrats, you get the award for being the last remaining attendee on the session. Extra Merry Christmas to you, and we might wrap this session up then, unless you are busy typing away another question. Oh, awesome. Cheers, mate.
You're welcome.
Thanks,
Merry
everyone.
Christmas.
Cheers,
Thanks,
y'all.
everybody.
Bye.
So, bye.